This morning I'm talking about what prevents spiritual change. And it's basically focus on transformation. So I was thinking about the whole subject of transformation, which is a key theme in the Ageless Wisdom teachings, and applying that theme to what's going on in the United States today. And it gave me hope, because the teaching, has been given to us not by a human being, but by a great one that is part of higher realms that we dream about oftentimes, we read about actually in the teaching, we recognize through the various spiritual traditions that have passed down through humanity. And transformation is one of those key themes. In other words, change. Change for the better, and not just change physically, but change emotionally, mentally, spiritually, in our understanding about life and the purpose of life. So when I see those angry mobs and the fear that they are instilling in the good people, and those that lost their lives on January 6th, a transformation is taking place. It truly is. We just need to see the greater picture. For spiritual students, the process of transformation is very intense. It's almost like living a condensed life. Condensed. I remember back when, this is probably dating me, but when I was very young, I just loved to make the orange juice because it came out of a can and it was frozen. Remember that? It was like, when I call condensed, everything was jam-packed and frozen, and then we had to add water to it. The more water you added to it, the less sour the orange juice seemed to be. So spiritual students don't water down their process of transformation. Just the opposite. It intensifies their life. So in the future, those that have undergone the spiritual process of transformation will be the change makers throughout the world, just like those that walked before us. So today I'm going to be talking about transformation, bringing in a little history of some great ones that put up with us as we were trying to undergo transformation, so that we can feel privileged and honored to know that the whole process of transformation is a gift to our soul, a gift to humanity. All we have to do is to practice it. Transformation is a process through which we can increase our life in such a way that as a spiritual being, we're going to now be able to receive energies, higher energies, energies that will inspire us, energies that come from impressions from our teacher or our earthly or subjective ashram. The process, truly, the process of transformation is a process of refining our whole human constitution, all our glands, our organs, bringing out the light from our atomic structure. When this happens, we become refined human beings. This refinement is like it's like a Stradivarius or an Amani. We become a instrument that is so beautiful and so refined that we can register these impressions from the great ones, impressions from the higher ashram, and so forth, even from hierarchy. So this is transformation and what we can experience as a result of undergoing transformation. A good friend is one who enlightens us. Bad friends lead us toward darkness, away from the light. Isn't that simple? Good friends enlighten us, bad friends lead us toward darkness. Just like good friends can enlighten their nation, and bad friends can lead them, their nation, into darkness. The very best examples of good friends we can think of would be the Lord Buddha, the Christ, and our teachers. Remember the story about the kind of friend that Buddha was. Prince Ajatasattu was befriended by an evil minister. The prince was befriended by an evil minister. Devadatta had convinced this prince to kill his father, King Bimbisara. The king was a friend of Lord Buddha. Angulimala, whose name means necklace of fingers, was a murderer who used to cut off the fingers off. This is horrible. Sorry. Angulimala was a murderer who used to cut the fingers off his victims and hang them around his neck. Ajatasattu ordered Angulimala to kill 1,000 people, including the Lord Buddha, and collect the fingers. 998 were killed, and he was about to kill his own mother and Lord Buddha to complete the total. But when he approached Lord Buddha, he felt a deep transformation in his soul, and he was won over and became one of Buddha's followers. When you read about the history of the followers of Lord Buddha, it's horrifying. You read about Devadatta, and I was reading a little bit about the history of Devadatta. Who was a follower of Buddha, but he was also a divider. He tried to divide the followers of Buddha to follow him. He said, the Lord Buddha is aging now and I'm young. Follow me. And then he went to Lord Buddha and he said, put me in your place. You're aging. You need to leave. Let me take over. What do you think the Lord Buddha did? He didn't gracefully bow to Devadatta and say, okay, you're right, I'm an old man. He said, get the hell out of here. Well, probably not quite that way. But people like these great ones are not easily how can I say it? They're strong in themselves and they're not intimidated by loud voices and popular people. They have their principles, they have their morals. But these great ones have more than principles and morals. It's like they have the whole wisdom of the universe in their entire being that has given them such strength, such courage, such confidence that a little mortal human being will never intimidate them. That's the kind of power that those who have undergone this whole transformational process becomes. Spiritual power. So transformation is changed. And that's what happened to Agni. He moved into the aura of the Buddha and changed. The process and result of transformation enables progressive changes to take place in our physical, emotional, and mental bodies as a result of increasing light. Light is the result of the radioactivity and emitting energy of fire from within the atom, from within any life form. As this fire climbs and purifies the centers within your human constitution, this increasing fire begins to release greater beauty and glory into your aura. And in all that you create, there is a spiritual fragrance. Oftentimes, teachers can recognize when etherically their students come to them not by what they see, but what they smell, by the fragrance of the student. It's very beautiful, or stinky, depending. When Agni was approaching the Lord Buddha and felt deep transformation in his soul, it was because he had become enveloped in the aura of Buddha. He breathed in the spiritual fragrance of Buddha, which put him on the path of transformation. As the fires of transformation get underway, this process will gradually intensify the fires of the 7 centers in your human constitution, your chakra system. These creative fires increase stability, procreation, healing, cooperation, creativity, leadership. Also synthesis and sacrificial service. And all of these effects are the result of these 7 centers: the base of the spine, the sexual center, the solar plexus. The solar plexus becomes an agent of healing. The higher level, the upper level of the solar plexus becomes an agent of healing once this light increases as a result of your transformation. The throat center, or the heart center, is cooperation. The throat center is creativity. The Agni center, your leadership, increases. As this light, we can almost, let's call it the Kundalini energy. As this threefold Kundalini energy goes up your spine, eventually over lifetimes, the Agni center opens and you become a leader. And the more light that is released, the more transformation you undergo, the greater the leader you are. When the head center opens, not only does your leadership increase, but you also now lead through synthesis and sacrificial service. So there are effects. You can't just say, as a spiritual person, because you've read the books and you know how to define transformation, it doesn't make you transform. It is the practice that transforms you and then increases the light, and then you become more stable. you become a healer, and so forth. There are certain actions which keep the fires of transformation climbing. So once these creative fires increase, then we don't just stay there. That's the point. We don't just stay at that level. It is the process of expanding and ascending. And these are the actions: self-exertion. I don't have time to get into all of this, but just take these, these words down and think about, what does self-exertion mean? Sacrificial service. How do you practice sacrificial service? How does sacrificial service relate to self-exertion? Dedication to the group cause. As you undergo these fires of transformation, dedication to the group cause. It's really amazing to see people whose fires are increasing. Compassion increases, fearlessness increases, being steadfast. You don't change. It's like, change your mind. I better qualify that. Steadfastness means what? What can we say? A promise is a promise is a promise. You have a committee of people. You have a nation of people. And you say, this is the way it is. Tomorrow, you don't say, oh, no, I've changed my mind. That is the way it is. When you have a committee with you and you say, this week, this is what we are going to do, the committee gathers, you have a meeting, you move into action, and the leader says, I've changed my mind. I'm not going to do this. We're going to do something different. That is not steadfastness. And the sense of responsibility, trustworthiness, nobility, and enthusiasm. For example, the act of compassion. To be compassionate, you must stand outside of yourself and stand in the light of otherness. Isn't that an interesting word, otherness? I made it up, but it seems real. We stand in the light of otherness. Here's a story. Helena Rourke, the mother of Agni Yoga and founder of the teaching of living ethics, visited a big monastery. A monk came dressed in ragged clothes, and he had not washed for maybe 20 days. That's an Iowa word, washed. Washed, okay. It's like album and album. I never can get that. Anyway, so this monk came dressed in ragged clothes, and he had not washed for maybe 20 days. He came and he smiled at her, smiled at Helena Rourke. Helena Rourke looked at his eyes and said, "You are the Tibetan." Yes. And she melted. Master Moria tells a story that people look at the clothes and smell and think it's a big deal. So what if he smells? So what if he dresses like that? Because at 14,000 feet, people do not even have a cloth to wrap themselves in. Do not judge, he said from the outside. See the simplicity. Later, the Tibetan and Helena Rourke talked for a few hours, and she was in awe that she was in front of the master who is dressed like that. It was the same with Jesus and with Buddha. What was Buddha dressed in? What was Buddha eating? Where was he living? It was in simplicity. Compassion keeps the fire of transformation climbing. The flame of transformation is within our body. It is in the center at the base of the spine. This flame must be raised along your spinal cord, and when united with certain other fires, such as the fire of mind and the fire of spirit, then they complete the transformational process. As you undergo the process of transformation, you're going to meet enemies along your way. It is the wise and vigilant person who will first educate themselves about these enemies. And then they will stay alert to the influences. For these influences are involutionary to your progressive and advancing efforts. This is why you must be vigilant to your enemies and recognize it's going to happen. We certainly see examples in all the stories and the biographies of all the great ones about their enemies. Here's a story. A yogi in the Himalayas was very strong, and he had many good friends. If anyone was going to do something wrong to him, that person was going to be horrified. He would not do them any harm. 15 to 20 people came to this yogi and asked him, "What is the secret? We had evil thoughts. We had destructive thoughts. We even had criminal thoughts about you. We were going to kill you. But when we came within 1 mile of you, we changed our minds." What is it? Oh, the yogi said, "I have an army of lions. If anyone comes around me, I release the lions, and the lions eat their mind." They asked, "Well, what are these lions?" He answered, "Well, I create good thought forms, and I put them in the shape of lions. And I tell them, 'Lions, attack them,' and they attack. If you misuse the lions, they eat you." That is how you can become immune in some sense. There are some common enemies, not common in nature, but commonly found on the path of transformation. One is blind urges and drives. This phenomenon occurs when we are in a state of mechanical thinking, where all outer and inner contacts go deep into our psychology, and they cause us to behave in certain ways. Blind ways, in other words, against our true will. We are acting and feeling and thinking not according to our own wishes, but what has been placed, say, into our lower mind. This is what happens when we're in a state of mechanical thinking. Negative emotions. Negative emotions are created through the subconscious and mechanical activity of our mind, and the result is we build glamours. Our stupidities. I asked various people to give me their lists of what they think stupidities are, and this is what they said. Stubbornness. Causes of our laziness. Insecurities. Fears. Prejudice. Lack of organization. I thought that was interesting. Causes of procrastination and pride. Those are our stupidities. Vanities. Vanities are false images that we have about ourselves. The ego. The ego of a person is a position, and let me say, it's the location where our unfolding human soul is identified. That's ego. For example, the soul becomes totally identified with his emotional nature. Whatever the contents of the person's emotional nature, that content controls the individual's behavior. Isn't that interesting? Our behavior. It becomes the command post of our unfolding human soul. For example, if someone becomes knowledgeable of the teaching and then uses that knowledge for self-interest, they become controlled by a very devastating and long-lasting disease called what? Ego. Ego is a false self that lives as if it is the center of the universe. Other lesser-known enemies to our transformation that obviously negatively influence our thinking is the lack of self-improvement. This is interesting to me, to think that the lack of self-improvement negatively influences our thinking, and the result is stops the process of transformation. The lack of self-improvement. We begin to think or devise ways in which we convince ourselves that we should not make time for self-improvement. I've got enough to do to keep up every day. I don't have time to change. That's air quote, okay? This can be the result of some sneaky and manipulative or justified thinking, such as, if I undergo a plan for self-improvement, this is going to cause problems in my family life. It's also going to cause me to lose friends. Or, I'm already pretty advanced. Why change myself when others have more difficulties in their behaviors than I do? Or, so what if I change? No one else is trying to change themselves. Or, no one can change, not really, so why should I? This is how we sabotage our process of transformation. Uselessness is another that negatively influences our thinking. You think, okay, I'm not advanced enough to undergo the disciplines of transformation. When the time is right, I'll know it, but not now. Or, things in my life are so difficult right now and time-consuming, it would never be possible for me to engage in the process of transformation. Now, obviously, that person is not going to verbalize that, but they think it. And they're right, they're not going to change. They won't change. Or if that person who is supposed to be spiritually advanced is unable to demonstrate the fires of transformation, who are they to try? Group activities and meetings. The enemies of negative thinking cause the person to believe, why do I need to attend group meetings or classes and activities related to spiritual progress? My family life is more important. My job is more important. I don't need a group to be spiritual, and so forth. Group stuff is all hocus pocus anyway. I don't need a spiritual group to help me advance. Other enemies to transformation are irritation. Irritation creates friction. It causes spiritual tension to fail. Irritation causes spiritual tension to fail. Irritation occurs when we are overly sensitive. Oversensitivity occurs when the spiritual energies created by a person's striving becomes congested within their emotional body. I'm going to repeat myself. Oversensitivity occurs when the spiritual energies created by that person's striving becomes congested within their emotional or etheric body. That's irritation. Hatred. Hatred is a dark emotion. The cause of hatred is personal interests. This is very interesting. The cause of hatred is personal interests and separative thinking and actions. Fault-finding habits. Master M says the difficulties of the path are caused by habits. He also says an Agni yogi has no habits because they know that they are nothing. These habits are nothing more than the decay of life. And that particular quote is from the book Agni Yoga, verse 198. Also, ingratitude. Ingratitude is rooted in ego and vanity. And worry. Worry is the result of this. This is so interesting. It is the result of the state of confusion and chaos. That's worry. Worry cuts us from the fires of hope and faith. Transformation can only be carried on in spiritual tension and focus. For example, the string of the bow must be held in tension if the archer's arrow is to successfully reach its target. I remember when I was in camp, when I was 1,000 years younger, and it was summer camp in Minnesota, and I took archery. I could never get the right tension on that arrow. I would just release that arrow, and it, and that's what happens sometimes with our goals. And we wonder why, why are we not reaching our goals? Why are we failing? Why is my business failing? Why is this failing? Why is that failing? Because there's not enough spiritual tension and it can't reach its target. The enemies of transformation cause the tension of the archer's bow to slacken, preventing the arrow from reaching its target. It's like having a various violin that all the strings are loosened. Can't hear a sound. No sound, no spiritual tension. Spiritual tension is the result of accumulated energy, which helps us to achieve transformation and to live a life in a higher frequency, in greater light. When our focus and our attention reaches a certain level, attacks are going to be leveled at us and can be, what's interesting with these attacks, we can then take these attacks and use them to further increase our tension and focus. Tacta adversa. This is the stage in which the evolving life, where crises and problems turn into opportunities rather than limitations or enemies to your transformation. Backsliders. Backsliders. Can one who is on the path of transformation backslide? Absolutely. If and the teaching is very specific about this. The answer is yes, if the person has slander and treason in their karmic ledger. Treason and slander can cause them to backslide. When one slanders those who sacrifice themselves to spread light and beauty, that one builds a dark karma that years later prevents the slanderer from entering into light until the consequences of the deed are paid for. One day, Gandhi was in the Himalayas doing his meditation and spiritual exercises. When he came down from the mountains, he saw that 5,000 people were sitting there. So he sat down and he read to them the Beatitudes. Then he said, "My friends, go and live according to these principles." That man had Christ consciousness. When he was killed by a man, at the moment of dying, Gandhi said, "Don't harm him." That was his greatest test. When he was dying and others were saying, "Kill the assassin," Gandhi said, "No, don't harm him." When one can persevere on the path of transformation, even with such heavy karma, if they live a life of compassion, of gratitude, and forgiveness, and if they do not allow the conditions of their life deter them from walking ahead on the path of transformation, and also by serving those they have hurt in the past, and by asking their forgiveness, they will undergo transformation. Backsliders, we are told, face future horrors, pain, and suffering. And here's a quote from the teaching. "On the path of your transformation, you must have the love of your teacher, who stays with you in all conditions, even risking themselves in certain cases. As long as you carry love in your heart toward your teacher, you will never be left without help, except in cases of slander and treason." Slander and treason cuts the silver cord between the slanderer, the traitor, and the teacher, and leaves the traitor in a desperate condition. So let me close with this story. In an old Armenian monastery, there is a very old teacher who used to find ways to create friendship within the classes and among the students in the school as a whole. In that school, there was a great friendship among everyone. Once, when talking to the class, he said, "When you are surrounded with good friends, you become creative, you bloom, and you become beautiful. Friends are necessary for your transformation." So now we know what transformation is, and we know what prevents transformation, what prevents spiritual change.